Fantastic. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Today is Wednesday, April 30th. That means tomorrow's May 1st. That's crazy. It's currently 6:15 in the evening on Wednesday, April 30th, and this is Standing Committee of Finance and Facilities. We are running the Zoom meeting right now, but we have no remote participation via that meeting, so I'm not going to read the whole chair script that says we're allowed to meet remotely due to the acts of 2021, which have been several times re-extended. This evening, the agenda is up on the screen right now for everybody to see. Let me scroll down a little bit. These are the things we hope to get through. And so the first item on our agenda is our meeting minutes, and I'm going to apologize in advance. We don't need to take a roll call vote because everybody's here in person. However, I do need to take my little meeting minutes while also trying to run the meeting. So I might be a tad bit delayed. Okay. So first order of business, I'm looking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was Wednesday, March 26th.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Silva.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Any corrections? I'm going to hope that that was my only mistake tonight, okay? Any corrections, omissions? Anybody want to fix anything? I'm looking to my editor to my left, editor-in-chief. All right, there's a motion on the table. All those in favor? Fantastic. That passes 3-0. We get that off our screen. Our next item on our agenda is our building and grounds report, and we have it's a live report this evening.
Well, I wanted to, I asked John Coffey to come here this evening because, as you know, Mr. Shiroli has left the district and pursued other avenues for his work employment. And so John has worked with us as the assistant director for a couple of years now, and he has stepped into the role while to finish out this year and moving forward, and has done. I just want him to come so you could all meet him, and also just thank him for the work that he's doing. Certainly he and Bob were a great team and did a lot of work together. And he is currently handling it all on his own and doing such a great job and working with all of us and working with the entire buildings and grounds crew. And so I wanted to thank him for all of his work that he's been doing already and just give him an opportunity for all of you to meet him.
Great.
So, Mr. Coffey.
Yeah, so if you haven't met me before, I was the assistant facility director for about 3.5 years under Bob. In the last couple months, I've been the interim. So am I going over the B&G report?
You don't need to.
Okay.
You don't need to. If
Okay.
there's any highlights you want to talk about that are
Nope. So
notable.
I mean, just through the just regular B&G report, we did a lot of stuff over break. We did all our filter maintenance. We usually do it in February, but due to the extended February break and not be able to get access to most of the equipment, we pushed it off to April break. So we did all the HVAC filters. We did some repairs on the stadiums at Herd Stadium and the new stadium bleachers, and then a big thing that we did was energy assessments. We had a couple of energy assessments through National Grid, and we also completed the lighting LED upgrade at 7 of our schools. So every school besides the middle school, which was already LED compliant, we pretty much replaced all the 2-foot, 3-foot, and 4-foot fluorescent bulbs and upgrade them to LED drivers and got rid of the ballast. And so we'll see energy savings with that in the future, and then also repairs. So that was the big thing we did.
All right. Well, thanks for being here. Thanks for stepping up. I'm not going to lie to you. We're going to miss Bob, but I'm very confident that you will do a wonderful job filling his shoes. Relative to the LED lighting and your statement that we will see savings, I'm kind of looking at you, and I'm kind of looking at Miss Emma. Emma and I have talked before about trying to bring forward to F&F some kind of an energy presentation. Unlike the solar, would we expect to see a much more direct energy savings from this particular change? Is it going to be a one-to-one kind of?
Yes, so we expect it to be a one-to-one. We do expect to see the savings over time, right? It's not going to be all up front, but we do expect to see energy savings and maintenance savings, sort of the average payback for the investment via these savings. And keep in mind that this investment was made with existing solar credits, so not at a cost to the district, which is phenomenal. And the average sort of payback period is about just shy of 4 years.
If we had paid something.
Yes, yes. So to recoup the city's investment, but not our budget investment. And we do expect to see electric savings and maintenance savings, depending on the school, between $10,000 and $20,000. So,
Fantastic.
yes.
Awesome. And then I'm going to look around the room in just a minute, but I'm also going to use my incredible Carnat capabilities and say that while we have you in the hot seat, not relative to this B&G report, but relative to what's going to happen in the summer,
Yep.
what are you looking at for awesome projects for while the buildings are mostly empty?
Yep. So we're just starting right now to plan for the summer projects. Right now, we're going to try to run the summer custodial program again. We're going to run it maybe a little bit smaller than we did in the past, just to stay within our budget.
Will you expand on that for our viewers at home?
Yeah.
Who don't know what that is?
Yeah, so the summer custodial program, it will be the third year that we've run it since I've been here. They ran it previous years, but I think they stopped during COVID. What it does is it gives an opportunity. We have students, we have other staff members, maybe from the kitchen or transportation. They come in to the school and they work directly with the custodial staff, and they help them clear out rooms, and it kind of helps with us being in the summer with people taking time off. The people that come in, they do a great job. They work super hard, and they do a lot of the heavy lifting to make it so that these custodials can come into a room and just do what they need to do with the waxing or the cleaning or the carpet cleaning and stuff like that.
And is
So-
that a pipeline of future employees for
So
your
we-
department?
Yes, we have got people from the past. I have a custodian that's been here for about 15 years now, and he came from that program. And just recently, I had someone last summer who was in the program, and he is now currently a full-time employee with us too. So like you said, it's a great way to vet custodians in a capacity where you can see just how good their work ethic is and if they're a good fit. And the first couple of years, we had some problems, but every year we've learned from that, and we have some really good candidates now. So I'm very happy about the program.
Fantastic. Mr. Manzo, that was your Carnat question.
You brought me up then. So how do we pay for this? Is this part of a grant support from somewhere? Is it summer jobs or something?
We also, so a portion of this is funded through our appropriated budget. We also have additional funding when awarded. We're able to supplement that program additionally and allow more students to participate through the First Jobs grant program. Yes.
And part of that program too, the Attain program reaches out, and we do take one or two of those people from that program and put them out of school, and they work, I think they work about 20 hours a week, 2 or 3 days, and it's a good opportunity for those kids to get some real world job experience. So that's a good part of this program too.
Great.
Yeah, I'm looking around the room. Mr. Crowley, I would even let you ask a question if you'd like. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Coffey before we let him out of the hot seat?
Thank you for your efforts. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, John.
Thank you.
Okay, so another quick look at the budget, at the agenda. I'm going to put up a slide deck, all right? We're jumping into our athletic department review, and in order to do that, we're gonna have some slides on our screen. So here's our agenda. Okay, are we ready for the first slide, or should I not go to this slide yet?
You ready for the first slide? All right, just hit the button for green.
Okay, so,
So we wanted to welcome Mr. Wood here tonight, our athletic director, just to share kind of an update. We haven't done this for at least a year, if not two, so kind of an update on the athletic department, various participation rates, et cetera, that he was going to share with us tonight, just a little bit of information. And then we were going to also talk about just advertising, so that'll be part of the presentation as
okay,
well.
and when you want me to go to the next slide, just say next, okay?
Sure. So the first slide here is just a overview of the athletics revenue per season. I think probably the one that jumps out, winter season, that would exclude our middle school sports. The fall season, spring season, bring in about 100 middle school students for cross-country and outdoor track. So you'll probably see that as something that jumps out right there.
And do you want, if somebody has a question, are they allowed to ask, or would you like them to hold till the end?
No, they can ask, fire away, sure.
Okay, everybody, I'm going to be looking at our athletic director, so please feel free to unmute yourselves and say question, okay?
All right. So that's pretty much it for that side, unless anyone has any questions. So the next slide here is an update on our coaches stipends for 24-25. Yep.
I think one thing to note, just on the coaches stipends, this was the second year, is it, Sue, that we've had the second contract, that we had kind of categorized them and came up with, the stipends used to kind of be all over the place, and so we came up with categories for them, and so there, you can see the various categories on the tier 1, 2, 3, 4 level sports, and so we did that. And the last contract, we had looked at other districts and what they were doing. So this was something similar, but just to make it even across the board based on the sport.
I'm going back, sorry. Yep.
Can you answer, with regard to the different sports, is every high school sport allotted a head coach and an assistant coach?
So every sport is allotted a head coach. The assistant coach is generally allocated in regards to registration or enrollment, so larger programs will have more staff. I've looked into to see if the MIA has any sort of ratio or rubric that they would use to adhere to coach to, player ratio. And I can't really find one. It's usually kind of determined on the district. But to answer your question, every program will be allotted a head coach.
So for football, how many total coaches are there?
I believe there are 8.
And for lacrosse, how many total coaches are there roughly?
Boys and girls.
Boys lacrosse.
Boys lacrosse, there are 1 head coach and 1 assistant coach, 2 volunteers.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay?
You can go to the next slide. That one's a little bit redundant, so. So the next 3 slides break down our student participation in regards to athletics per season. And like I said, our middle school programs, are pretty robust for cross-country and outdoor tracks. Is probably something that jumps out in that regard.
And I guess I'll just ask you, as we blow through these particular slides,
Sure thing.
are you seeing any trends? Are there upward or downward trends, especially trends that might concern you?
Sure. I think, the one that I see is our swimming, where we have 5 students. We were lucky enough this year to team up with Gloucester High School with their co-op. Just taking a deeper look into that, generally your club programs that do offer swimming, they coincide the same season as us, which is kind of a big no-no in regards to bona fide team member rule. So I don't know if that's going to be a trend or if that's going to be something that changes. The Merrimack Valley does offer swim in the fall to basically try to offset that. So that's one of the things that I'm just trying to see if that is just something that's a trend now. I did put a poll out to eighth graders this year, and I had about 54 responses, and about 6 of them weren't interested in swim. So good sign. I just don't know, if they're involved in a club program or whatever, so.
And was that call to have them participate this year as eighth graders, or you're looking at when they come up to
When
the
they
high
come up
school
to
next year?
yes, when they come
And
to
what
high school.
about, if this number stays low, what about petitioning to get a waiver to allow eighth graders? Or maybe, is that as low as we can go?
Go 7th grade too.
So would we, are you
Yeah.
considering filing for that waiver to get this number up?
Yeah, I think, last year I had a waiver out for 8th grade. I didn't do a 7th grade one just 'cause I didn't have really any for 8th graders. So if there is interest out there,
So we
happy.
could have had eighth graders swim this year,
we could have, yes, they
but
didn't
none
want to.
came to you.
Correct.
Okay.
Is that the only a conflict between club and high school athletics that you know of?
That's the one I've
The other
noticed.
sports sort of respect the boundaries, I guess?
Yeah, yes, yes, in some cases, but, cheer tends to kind of to be a little bit of an overlap with club and, in-season cheer. But that's the one that I've really noticed, just because, looking into the co-op and just kind of seeing, and talking to other athletic directors and what their issue is with their swim team and getting kids.
All right, how about if we wanted to pull eighth graders next year? How are we communicating with with our eighth grade body? Whether it's not just this building, they can live anywhere in Beverly, or would they have to be a BMS student
In regards to just,
being on the swim team with a waiver? When you file a waiver, oh boy, here comes Sue. Are you, no. Is there a rule when you file a waiver, who can participate? Do they have to be a Beverly Public School student?
so if a student is Beverly Public School student, if they're homeschooled, if a student is, landmark and the district is paying, if they're outplaced by the district, they can participate with Beverly Athletics as well, so.
They have,
Okay, so then how do we do the outreach? I guess I'm just very surprised that we had no eighth graders take advantage this year. And so I'm worried that maybe it was because we were not good communicators, or like how we can fill that pipeline.
Yeah, like I said, being able to reach out to, to Derek Brennan, who's, our 8th grade assistant principal here, having access to, contact information, putting surveys out there, polls, just being able to, see whatever information I can get from what I have access to.
And certainly, we can send information to homeschool families that we have.
Sure.
That information. We could certainly send a flyer out to 8th grade families that would fall into that category.
I think as part of the homeschool package, we always have information for them that they can participate.
So I guess maybe in the bigger picture, and I understand that your job has a scope to it. We have precious few middle school sports, but we have a lot of youth programs in our city, right? And those youth programs, I'm sure, don't want a boss, right? Nor do you want any more work to do, right? So, but trying to strike that balance in between, saying, for instance, I know we have a fantastic Sharks program at the Y, so maybe there could be some kind of a collaboration without a hierarchical expectation.
Yeah, just to hearken on that particular point, we used to offer middle school field hockey, and when I first started, I had a conversation with C.O. Varnes, who runs the youth field hockey program, and we felt like there was too much overlap in regards to if I'm taking 6 of their kids, and now we're balancing out, a schedule between middle school and youth field hockey, I don't want to feel like I'm cannibalizing his program. So, I think the agreement is, if this is something you want to do, we'll work with you. We'll have, youth events at the high school, and you can kind of run your program as it is, and just knowing that, essentially, in that case, it's going to be a feeder program for the high school. So, I'm really at the point here, I'll collaborate and work with anyone just to make sure that we have a path for these kids to be able to access, what we can offer. So just making sure, whether it's the club team that they have in regards to the Sharks or swim or field hockey, so.
Great.
And do we swim at the Y?
Correct. Yes.
We don't have a pool on the roof. Come on now.
We have a contract with the Y for their pool time. I just would add, the waiver process is individual per sport, and there are requirements to qualify for that waiver. So it's not that we have a
Right.
general waiver that all 8th graders could play athletics at the high school. It's individually by sport. So, Ryan would need to make a determination that we need to apply for a waiver for swimming because our numbers are low, and then it would only apply to swimming. So I just wouldn't want the misunderstanding that all of a sudden all the 8th graders are trying out for your football team.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
Right, and how about, is there a number at which we determine that we're not going to offer a sport because we dropped too low?
I mean, like I said, let's go back to swim. The number for swim is about 11 or 12 kids to actually have, a functioning swim team. You go up against programs that, bring 35 kids. It's not fair to really sit there and have 11 kids while they're all running heats against themselves, So in that regard, we kind of look at that. In other sports, you look at, is it something that's going to be, feasible? I mean, if you have 5 kids playing basketball, I mean, that's not going to last in regards to the length of the season, so.
What about
it really
boys
varies.
tennis?
Boys tennis, in boys tennis, you could probably run a program with 7 kids if you wanted to, but it doesn't leave you a whole lot of slack on the other end in case kids get injured or trips or whatever. But like I said, you want to be able to go into a meet, match, or game knowing that you're going to be able to function as you would with a full staff, full group of kids, and making sure that, it's safe at the same time, not just wearing out these kids.
All right, one more question, and then I
Sure thing.
promise I'll switch to
That's
the
okay.
next slide.
Yeah.
What about, like, our girls' ice hockey team and the fact that we go in with other communities?
Yep.
Is that a possibility for our swim team?
It is, yes. So this year, the 5 kids that we had register, we co-opted with Gloucester High School this year. So we were in a co-op with them, so they had access to, they swam out of the Gloucester Y and at Gordon College. So they had access to that and swam with that particular team as a co-op.
Awesome. Okay. I'm looking. Anybody else? All right. Oh, yeah.
Brought up the girls' hockey. So how's that program been going? I know in years past, we've co-opted with different communities. And so who are we playing with now, and how's that going?
So we've been with Ipswich and Danvers, which has been a great co-op for, I believe, well over 10 years. The girls' hockey is kind of an interesting entity in regards to the amount of co-ops that are in that particular sport. And now, I think a lot of co-ops are really starting to kind of form a real allegiance to that because it helps to kind of sustain the program to have consistency with the teams that you're co-oping with. I go back to Masco, and Masco at one point had 9 communities, part of the UN of co-ops for hockey. So I think now that has kind of shifted a little bit in regards to making sure that you have that consistency with those teams that are part of your co-op.
Maybe the Professional Women's League will drive those numbers up. Okay.
All right, so on to our sponsorship topic here. I looked into this through kind of a listserv that I have with Cape Ann and Northeast Conference athletic directors in regards to generating revenue for the athletic department and also enhancing, shortfalls that the department may have. So in doing that, I kind of ran by just kind of the logistics and making sure that, everything was on the up and up in regards to, talking with Emma and Erin in regards to making sure that the policy is in place and, talking with Manchester Essex, who renovated their fields a couple years ago. And I believe once they renovated, they had started this sponsorship advertisement program, and they had generated about $30,000 to $35,000 in that first year alone. So that piqued my interest. So just looking into that and, noticing a few things around our facilities, fields, et cetera, I feel like that sponsorship revenue can be, utilized for our kids in various different, areas, and I listed a few on the slide.
Right, so I guess I'm going to try for a minute here to switch my hat from F and F hat to policy chair hat and say to you that we do have a naming policy, and there's a wait period. There is and so I guess I'm trying to assess what is the ask here? Is the ask for us, our committee, to vote whether to bring this to the committee of the whole to see if we have an appetite to do that? I shouldn't have put words in your mouth, I'm sorry.
I guess one
What
of the
is
things, in
ask?
terms of the naming, I think we were looking at like a temporary type of
Signage, yeah.
signage, not like naming of, like a scoreboard or whatever, but looking at temporary signage. So maybe you can talk about what they've done in different, what
Yeah,
that
like,
looks like in
Other
different
districts will have
districts.
vinyl signage that will go along whether a adjoining street or along the perimeter of the fields on the fence. Others will have like your yard signs that we saw during the COVID years with, that they would kind of manually just put into the ground and have that kind of posted in certain areas varying on sizes. So I think ideally as a place to start, that is kind of intriguing and trying to see if that's could be something that we could do.
I'm coming to you in a minute, but I'm looking across the table
At me?
at the three-pack of well-dressed women. Do we think that sponsorships and advertising falls under the naming policy? No, there's a different policy, right?
There's a different policy with KF, and I was gonna write it down and I
I
didn't.
know, I had
but-
the best plans my own self today.
So there is a separate policy, separate from the naming policy, that discusses the solicitation and allowing advertising of commercial products and services in our buildings or on our property. And so that was with the lens that we were coming to this group to then potentially go to the committee at large, to do it with the lens of not permanent, but just the ability to solicit advertisements for revenue.
All right, I see Dr. Silva's hand. He's been very patient.
So I think this is a great idea. I would say that it's already in practice because I know come football season, there are signs put up in front of the high school that you can pay for as sponsor to help the football boosters. I think having a policy or having something for the athletic department with the signage around the perimeter of the football field is great. There's a lot of square footage there, a lot of signs that could go up and perhaps even be seasonal. So there's a lot of open slots to raise those funds. So I think it's a great idea.
I'm looking. Mr. Manzo, do you have a question?
Well, just a follow-up then, if the boosters are already doing this, are we going to be stepping on any toes by doing the same thing?
So, I mean, the boosters would be, putting
bet-
that through as almost a fundraiser for that sense. This would be something that, as an athletic department, will be done under the athletic department's umbrella and not done as a silo, as like a fundraiser.
So I think the signs that go in front of Beverly High on the hill, on the
Yeah.
top of the hill, are the Beverly High BHS PTSO.
Yes, okay,
They're not sports related.
okay.
And so I'm looking over at the person who is very soon will no longer have this job, but every fundraising request, everybody wants to do fundraising has to submit a request and it has to be approved, and the approval sits with the superintendent of schools. So that is distinct and separate from, I'm going to put signs up on either the outside or maybe the inside of the tennis courts during tennis matches, right? So this is this is an example of the
Correct.
differentiation.
Yes.
And so again, I will say, what is the ask here? Because if we already have that policy, what would you like this body to do?
So the policy says that the school committee may grant permission for advertising of commercial products or services in school buildings or on school property. So we're, I think, looking for approval to move forward with a campaign of advertising specific for the athletic department and specific to some of the projects that he outlines here in that slide. So it's
All right,
policy
I have two
KH
questions.
it's policy KHB, just in case you were looking to write that, wanted to reference it. That's the policy. So when Ryan
you say
originally
again?
came up with this idea,
Its
we looked,
number?
KHB is the name of the policy.
Thank you.
And so we realized that we needed school committee approval in order to do that. He has since and I said, go back, figure out what you have. He's worked with Aaron and Emma, and they've come up with all of the different ideas that go along with that. But I think the request here is to come to FNF, so that FNF would then maybe go to the committee and request permission to have the committee grant permission, understanding the auspices under which that advertising would take place and what the money would be going to.
Okay, so I have two questions. I'm looking around the room. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay. One of my two questions is, I find it interesting that herd is not on here. And so that question maybe has several tentacles. But number two would be the scope of, do you anticipate that any given advertising that you might sell would be very scoped to that particular sport, to that area where that sport is played, versus, for instance, the side of a bus, because that's a whole nother area of advertising, or versus, the front of the school building, right? So like, and I anticipate that question will be asked at the committee of the whole, that's why I need that answer if I'm gonna ask my body to vote, and then go ask another body to vote.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if we're talking, if it's the fall season here, that the ideal places to advertise would be Herd Stadium, 40 Field, for as outside, areas to, have your sponsorship or ads, on view. And then as it relates to, winter, obviously inside the field house and, our other locations that would allow us to have those particular sponsorships would be ideal as well.
So fairly scoped to where the sport is being played.
So, I was going to say, so the intent is not to necessarily say that, or I don't believe that this fundraising would benefit improvements for the athletic department or athletic department costs as a whole, because some spaces may be more scoped to be able to do fundraising and some spaces might not be, right? So if we want to continue to talk about our swimming team, right, they're on a co-op, so we couldn't advertise at the Gloucester YMCA, right? That would be outside of our scope, but that wouldn't necessarily preclude them from receiving benefit or using these funds to purchase something that would benefit that team.
For sure. That, like, how we spend the money, how it comes in is different than how we might spend it.
Yes.
I get that. The question comes really like, am I only going to be putting up advertising in the gym, or on the side of the tennis fence, or on the fence that's around the track, or on the fence that is around Herd Stadium, versus is the expectation I'm gonna, put a huge banner on the side of that wall of that school over there, right? Or am I gonna ask to put a banner on a bus?
Right.
Right, so I believe the intent is to do it on surfaces surrounding and adjacent to athletic fields and courts. So I guess, to the extent that you would call the side of that building adjacent, I do think that I think I'm going to go ahead and here assume that similar to, as you've discussed, right, there is an approval process that exists for fundraising through the superintendent, that there would be a similar sort of logistical conversation
Sale
at
by
any given,
sale.
yes, on any given time to make sure that like, yes, this is okay. Yes, this sort of fits within what we would consider our code of ethics that we would allow for advertising, right? We're a school. And so we have a code of ethics of what we would or would not allow to happen, right? So at any given point, I would imagine that there would be a conversation and, so it wouldn't necessarily say Beverly Middle School brought to you by, but there would potentially be local business advertising adjacent to, courts or
Adjacent to-
fields.
Yeah.
Okay, committee,
That was my question, so I'm good.
you should be very scared that we're thinking alike.
I'll tell you who surprises me.
The only place I would have gone beyond the buses are the patches on the uniforms, the softball players, like NASCAR crowd.
Like
And
pro
just saying on
soccer.
the,
We're
on
not
the
there yet.
buses, there's
yeah,
laws
I-
around how much can actually be taken up with any type of advertising. So it's a very small amount, so you can't just like
kind
slap
of
things on.
envision this as, this is something that, we're quote unquote getting off the ground, that to keep it, clear, concise, and uniform
Yeah.
in regards to, how it's being promoted, so.
Okay, body that is here,
slide.
all four of us.
Next
Go to your
slide.
next slide,
Go to your next slide.
Go to the next slide, oh my goodness. Here we go.
and it'll magically appear. Look at that.
No. I'm ready to write down. Would anybody like to make this motion that's currently on the screen?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Coelho, and then Dr. Silva did a second. Now that we've already beaten up Mr. Ryan Wood with all our questions, are there any more questions? Because really, like, a motion should happen, and then the conversation should
The
happen.
only
Yes,
thing
Dr. Silva.
the only thing I'll ask to say is that I think there's a great opportunity to coordinate with boosters to help fill those spots, because they'll be able to do a good job
Yep.
making it work. Yeah.
You probably need to read the motion.
Go ahead.
Okay. A recommended motion is that we move that the school committee approve the athletic department to solicit and collect revenues from the advertising of commercial products and services on surfaces surrounding or adjacent to athletic fields and courts, and to be deposited in, and those funds would be deposited into the athletic revolving fund for the same use and purpose.
Second.
Fantastic. All right, any questions? There's a motion on the table, voting. All right, that passes 4-0, and I will move that up to our committee of the whole. It'll probably happen in 2 weeks from now. It's not happening later tonight because it wasn't on the,
That's all right.
oh, this is not your slide. I think this means that you're off the hot seat.
Great.
Thank you very much,
everyone.
Ryan, for coming.
This is your chance to be athletic and run away.
Thanks, Ryan.
And now we are moving on to preschool tuition, and I'll turn that over to Emma. Talk
Makes
a little
this
bit about
one
that.
this
Okay,
la-
just put
my
back
slide.
on the screen for a half a second, our big agenda. So we are here on number 4. I'll go back in here. Vanna, da-da-da-da.
So-
After you.
Thank you. The last time that we met, we had an opportunity to review some of the user fees that support our different revolving funds. As sort of a blanket statement, we have not increased our user fees very frequently. Our preschool tuition was last increased for the 21-22 school year. I believe there had been some programmatic change around that time that had led to that increase. And in that review, we did, we are a bit behind where some of our neighbors and other surrounding communities are. It is also worth noting that our preschool tuition fund supports the salary and benefits of preschool teachers and paras. And as those expenses increase, our revolving fund is able to support less of those costs. And so, sort of following this review and noticing, we were a pretty substantial outlier. I had put together some information to bring forward for the committee to consider if they would be interested in increasing our preschool tuition. The preschool tuition is only charged to our peer students, and so those are students who are not on IEPs. It's about, at this point in the school year, it's about 80 students. Our revenues year over year fluctuate due to rolling admissions. Because the program, you become eligible as you turn 3 years old, there is a rolling admission process. This program also offers need-based tuition reduction, and roughly a third of our peer participants receive tuition reduction. Our tuition reduction guidelines are tied to the income guidelines that we use for free and reduced lunch. And so, from the perspective of the impact of increased tuition might have on our community, I did just want to sort of bring forward that reminder that we do offer a tuition reduction format. And just as sort of a point of comparison, a $500 increase in the annual tuition based on our enrollment trends wouldn't, for every $500 increased annual tuition, we would expect roughly $27,000 of additional collected revenues. So I did put a chart together on the side of what different annual tuition amounts, what that increase would be to an individual family, as well as what that would mean for anticipated increases in collected revenues. Again, as I mentioned, we do use this fund to offset or to help support the cost to the district of paraprofessionals and teachers in that program. Massachusetts general law does say that if you charge a salary to a revolving fund, you also have to charge the corresponding benefits to that revolving fund as well. So if we take the lens, the average cost in FY26 for a paraprofessional who takes family health insurance, that would cost roughly $67,000. Just to use as a point of comparison of if we were to increase it, my recommendation would be to make it an increase that could support additional staffing, ideally.
In FTE
Yes.
increments.
I think that would be helpful, right? Less so to, collect more money just to collect more money, so that this way it would be sort of a sustainable pattern. One of the conversations that we have had internally too is to consider most of our students are in our preschool for a 2-year program. They come in when they're 3, and by the time they're 5, they are joining us for kindergarten. And so while it has been a bit of a time since we have increased our tuitions, considering, would we make an increase and then, revisit it? Because again, we can't commit to holding a fee that would not necessarily be the scope, but to consider.
Expert in the beans. Which number on that side chart, or I'm hoping that the number that you most want is on that chart versus some other random number that you didn't bring forward. So which number, when you said a minute ago, you would hope that it would cover a full-time, one whole person. And I think you also said that whole person is going to cost $67,000 with benefits. And so I don't see a number up there that's $67,000.
So there is not one that is $67,000. However, I also do think that there's benefit in increments. So my recommendation was $6,000. I thought that put us closer in line to our peers. We'd be less of an outlier. And so that was my proposed, if that was,
This one.
my proposed recommendation. But of course, that is the decision of this committee, and so I leave that to you.
Yes, Dr. Silva.
I'd be happy to recommend the increase to be to 6,000.
Oh,
Make
do
a
you have a
motion
question? I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Coelho.
Mine's not really a question, but more like a statement. My ward is diverse. It has half the children, are covered by that low income where they would qualify for those scholarships, full scholarships, sliding scale scholarships. The other half of my ward does not. They might apply for it, and I know one constituent in my ward has applied in the past. Her child is in there for their second year and was denied because she made $30 a year too much, which sucks. And then with everything that's going on right now, people's fuel is going up. Home heating fuel, their national grid, both gas and electric, is skyrocketing. Their groceries are skyrocketing. Everything else is going up for certain people. So I think at this time, maybe we should think about doing increments for, the families instead of doing a whole $1,600 jump at once. That might mean some families can't afford all their groceries because they're going to have to skimp. Or maybe that child can't play t-ball because I know the preschoolers can play t-ball and, they have their little sports time. That extra 500 going from level 2, the 5,500 to the 6,000 might mean a child might not be able to have, services or sports that they might need for their coordination. I think it's too much of a jump at once, and we should think about doing increments because some of these families can't afford it all at once, and they do make just a little bit too much to afford to get a scholarship or even a little bit of a sliding scale scholarship.
Don't look at me when I say this because I don't want the are you even kidding me look. I'm not going to look at you while I say this. What are the chances that we could, so what you just described is often referred to in policy land as a benefits cliff, right? There's a very hard number and you either make the number, a means tested number, or you fall off the cliff. You don't make the number. Because you make just a little bit too much. And by making that too much and losing those benefits, you actually are behind, you lose out, right? So in the policy world, we like to think about policies that are more of a ramp than a cliff. So what are the chances that we could be more of a ramp in our free and reduced lunch, if that's instead of using the free and reduced lunch, which is a means tested, which has a cliff, could we do more of a graduated, you're retiring.
So I will say that we use the free and reduced lunch, but it does ramp as well. So, at some point, right, there is an amount of cliff, and so I absolutely hear that. But it is not exclusively those who would be eligible for free and reduced lunch who are eligible for scholarship. So our free tier, right, which is, so free preschool tuition would be 130% of the federal poverty guidelines, which is what free lunch is. And we do update sort of based on each annual year as the National School Lunch Program republishes their guidelines. We do update ours. Our reduced tier, which is 75% reduced tuition, is 185% of those guidelines. For our 50% tuition, it is 240% of those guidelines, and for 25%, it's 295% of those guidelines. So we do make an effort. That does not mean that it could not be revisited. We also use those same guidelines across our other programs as well. So we also use those for transportation, athletic fees, our laptop program as well.
No. So I guess what I'm going to say is 295% of the poverty level sounds fantastic. Except that the poverty level is a federal number across the entire United States, and we know that it costs a lot more money to live here. So I understand your point, Ms. Coelho. I also understand the other side of this equation and the fact that we've been low and we haven't raised our rate in a while. So in typical horrible policy land, is there a compromise to be struck? Would you like to make an alternative motion to the one that Dr. Silva made? And then we can take that as an amendment and see if it would pass.
I would like to make a motion to accept the annual tuition of $5,500 and then revisit it next year with another $500 increase.
All right, okay, were you going to second that motion, Mr. Manzo? Okay, that amended motion. So I'm going to say to you, what can we talk for a minute about back-to-back year increases versus this idea of, let's say you put a 3-year-old in next year, wouldn't it be nice to know that the tuition was frozen for 2 years? Now, there's no guarantee that we can say, because none of us might be at this table next year, so there's no guarantee that it wouldn't get revisited next year. But I guess I heard loud and clear that if we go a bigger number, then we can try to be more committed to holding that number for 2 years. So I don't know, I'm just asking, I'm just throwing that out. What do you think about that? Because your motion says we'll revisit next year and maybe we'll go up the last 500 next year.
It doesn't mean we have to go up next year. We can revisit it and see what it is. There's families that might have twins. I mean, that's going to be so much of a jump. You're talking, if a family's coming in with twins or is already in there with twins and they have another year, that's like $3,200.
Yes, Dr. Silva?
How about just having the 2 years start after instead of it being a year, have it be 2 years?
Okay, yeah, 2 years and then revisit it with an extra jump.
So your motion is 5,500 and with the hope to hold for 2 years.
Yes.
Is that a friendly amendment, Mr. Dr. Silva?
That is a friendly amendment.
That's a friendly amendment. You would accept that friendly amendment? I'm okay. No, I'm looking over there, but I was also looking at Oz.
I don't think you can dictate what the future school committee will do to fees.
I understand that. Like, from a spirit, I did not make any guarantees. I said with an intent, with a hope, because I recognize that maybe none of us will be in these chairs next year. But
Well-
with a kind of,
I mean, can't we just ask to revisit it in 2 years and just have it be a discussion? And just have it be the cadence?
This is just the recommendation that will go to the committee of the whole, so it could be changed.
Do we have a policy that says we're going to look at this in 2 years? Doesn't mean we have to raise it.
Mister, you're not on microphone.
So,
Just, I wouldn't worry too much about how much you wordsmith it, because
Okay.
it won't hold water.
Okay. All right. So my Robert's Rules expert behind the curtain is suggesting that we not be so concerned about the time frame in which we may or may not revisit it. So there is a friendly amendment, which means, well, let's just be official. There's an amendment to say we want it to be 5,500. There's a second for that amendment. Can we please vote on that amendment? Who agrees that we should amend our motion? Yes, Robert?
Second on the first motion. So
I didn't? I wasn't paying good enough attention.
the first one doesn't exist, it was never seconded, so this is your primary motion.
Yep, because you called on her after he said.
Called on it before getting a
So
second.
that's good.
That's good.
Sorry.
Now it's a motion.
Okay, so now we have a primary motion with a second on the table, and the motion is to raise our preschool tuition from $4,420 a year to $5,500 a year. Any more questions or discussion? Yes, Mr. Manzo.
to have one, when you looked at your anticipated increase in collected revenues, did you use the same proportion of people receiving some sort of relief or scholarship? So you didn't assume that that number is now going to go up? Because things like, preschool tuition are more expensive.
No, because it's income-based and not expense-based.
All right?
Last call. Motion on the table. All those who agree that we should raise the preschool tuition to $5,500 a year, it's time to vote. Any opposed? Just checking in case I was doing a bad counting. That passes 4-0. All right, and then there was Coelho a motion, and it was a Manzo second. Okay. What is next on our, hold on a minute, I'm coming. All right, next is, gifts to schools. Da-na-na-na, one of my favorite things. Let me remove my previous annotations, I apologize. Okay, so my friends on the F&F committee, in your packets and now on the screen, this month's gifts to schools, a total of $1,201.97. I'm looking for a motion to approve these gifts to schools.
So moved.
Second?
Awesome. Any questions about these incredibly generous gifts? All right, there's a motion on the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 4-0. Our next item on the agenda is a budget transfer, just a singular. Let me make it a little bigger. Budget transfer number 1743. It's on the screen. It was in your packets. I'm looking for a motion to approve this budget transfer.
Motion?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Thank you, Dr. Silva. Anybody have any questions on that one? Yes, Mr. Manzo.
So this is coming from health insurance. So what's that line look like when you take this money out? We're good?
We are good. So right, every year we do include in our health insurance budget a small contingency for the fact that open enrollment happens and continues past the budget period, and that there are qualifying events and changes to staffing that would result in changes to our health insurance. We on an annual on a monthly basis review our enrollments in our health insurance plans and the cost to the district, and keep a running tally, and and project out where we will be at the end of the year. We did have a very small surplus of funds available in that line. We have talked before about sort of our utility lines. And so this, I do believe, should hopefully help us get our middle school utilities through June 30th. And the funds are available in our health insurance line to cover that.
All right, and my question is around maybe the spirit of, we always have to approve budget transfers when we cross cost centers. And so I guess I'm feeling like sometimes they're closer. Like this one feels like it's far apart. And even though we are self-insured, so maybe I want you to talk a little bit more about the fact that because we are self-insured, this is our quote unquote own money. And so it's not really that far to transfer it to somewhere where we need it. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, I mean, right, so we are self-insured. I mean, these are the funds budgeted for the employer share of premiums. This is not coming from employee contributed premiums. This is a portion of the money that we budget for employer paid premium shares. Right, sometimes the lines are a little bit closer. We are able to take, utility money from one school and move it to another school. We, in our utility lines, don't have that flexibility at this time. Sometimes we're able to take it from like B&G, which feels closer to utilities, right? They sort of feel in that same family. Right now, in our B&G lines, where I'm sort of projecting us to be at the end of the year, acknowledging that John has quite a bit of work that he plans to do and intends to do. We also had deficits in our snow removal lines, ensuring that we have funds available to cover that within the B&G budget. This felt like a place where I knew that there would be funds available to be able to help support that. Again, this to me is part of the total compensation of our staff. And so had that money been budgeted as part of the total compensation for the staff at the middle school level, right, if we had allocated our insurance costs out by building where they reside, then this would have been an interdepartment, it could have happened within the middle school budget. So it didn't feel that far apart for me.
And so we have more than enough money to pay our portion of the insurance.
Absolutely.
And because we were conservative in our estimates, or because not as many people joined, or a combo?
Because there is change, and we do our best to project what that change will be. We have a very small sort of contingency for those changes, right? The open enrollment period for employees goes from May 1st to May 31st. So if anybody's watching, open enrollment starts tomorrow. But additionally, right, so we have folks that we don't know what their election is going to be. We always assume that current people will roll their plans over into the next year. But if somebody gets married, has a child, right, if there's lots of life circumstances that can happen that might change somebody's participation in our employer benefits. And so we do budget to take into consideration that a small amount of that will happen during the course of the year.
All right, friends, any other questions? There's a motion on the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 4-0. Next item on our agenda are a series of 4 policies. We don't do first readings here. I was going to say for a first reading, but we don't do first readings here. So they're for us to consider to pass up to the committee of the whole for a first reading. Have to keep my correct hat on at the correct time. All right. So these were in our packet. We'll take them one at a time. We'll try to blast through them, keeping in mind that we have 13 minutes till our next meeting. And if we feel rushed, we can always push one to the next meeting. So the first one is EEAE, the School Bus Safety Program. I will remind everybody that if there is no yellow, I might have to open the Microsoft Word version. If there's no yellow, that means there's no difference in between our policy and MASC policy. And Donna did those highlights for me because she's just that awesome.
I'm not sure it's in this one, but in this version, but on the EEAE, in number 1 and number 3, the only difference is they use the word student and we use the word children.
1 and 3, children. Okay.
That was the only difference between MASC and us and our policy.
Are we children or are we students?
We're children.
We're
This-
children.
You're looking at ours. And do we feel, administrators, do we feel strongly that it should be students? Because we're really only transporting students on our school buses, right? I mean, our students are children, but from a language nuance point of view, technically, this could be any child, would not have to be a school child. I could see why MASC uses their language.
Not opposed to it switching to student.
Yeah.
Have a
We
strong feeling, but student
Yeah.
would be fine.
Right. The only thing that I might add is we do also provide transportation for students who don't necessarily attend Beverly Public Schools, but attend Saints Academy. And so I don't know, again, they are students, but they are also children. So that would be the only perhaps.
All right, how about, I'm looking for a motion that we approve EEAE the way it is with the knowledge that sometimes we transport other children who are not necessarily BPS students.
Second.
Wait, who made the first?
You did.
You did.
I did, I did. Oh, cool, I'm in the meeting minutes. Dr. Silva, thank you for that second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 4-0. I'm scrolling to the next one. EEAEA. I feel like E-I-E-I-O. Who is that guy? Old McDonald, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, bus driver examination and training.
The difference on this one, Lorinda, is this one, our policy says the transportation director will approve and disapprove, where the MASC policy says the school committee reserves the right to approve or disapprove.
All right, so I'm highlighting that on our screen. Transportation director. I'm going to say as a school committee member, I don't want that job. I'm happy for that job to be delegated to the transportation director, and we do have a transportation director. All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve this policy as is.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, scrolling. All right, so here's a sibling policy. That's not really what it's called. It's called auxiliary, maybe. It has the same letters and then the -1. That means they're very closely related. Drug and alcohol testing for school bus and commercial vehicle drivers. Miss Erin Brown
And
in
I
the
believe-
plaid jacket.
Yeah, I believe they're the same policy.
Fantastic, which we would expect. Right down here, it says sources, MASC, and there are no other sources. Looking for a motion to approve this policy.
Motion?
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Any questions or comments? Concerns? Motion on the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that guy passes 4-0. Now, we have a few minutes left. I'm jumping back to our agenda.
One more policy.
Oh, really?
We had the
No,
dash
I
one
just
and the one
really- I didn't.
For those,
Student conduct on the school bus is perhaps the most important one. I apologize. EEAEC, school conduct on the school buses. Ms. Erin Brown, do you have any diffs for me on this one
yes,
that I want to
so
jump?
from the third sentence all the way to the last paragraph is unique to us, not part of MASC.
So everything I have highlighted on my
The
screen.
last paragraph is MASC, but up until that, where
The
it says
to
stop.
ensure, that's the last paragraph, right? To
Yep.
ensure safety?
Yep, so right through that one.
All right, so all of this is our own.
Yes.
All right, I'm scrolling to the bottom for a minute. All right, just wanted to make sure that it said that it was our own versus somebody else's.
What's the reason for the underline?
Just emphasis.
Emphasis. Okay.
And so, Mr. Manzo might remember, in the past, so this, like, for instance, in the third paragraph, the first underline, no student can ride the bus if they're not registered with the transportation department. A lot of times what would happen is be like, okay, your child goes to school here, and they don't normally take the bus, but they want to come home with their friend to my house, and my child takes the bus. So your child would want to get on the bus with my child to get to my house for an after-school play date, and we're like, no bueno, that doesn't work. So that's that particular emphasis, and we did have that happening a lot, so we emphasized it in the policy. Remember that?
Another portion of it is just calling the transportation department if you needed to change something and you were a rider versus going through schools. That's another portion of that, because sometimes people would just alert schools and not the transportation department, and it really needs to go through them. So that's part of this.
All right, so is there any more comments or questions on this particular policy?
I think there was also the case of there has to be someone there for a kindergartner.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
That was-
emphasized down
That was very
lower.
important
Yep.
as well. And then the only other thing I would mention is that there's one his/her in there, and I think, I don't know if you're changing those as a matter of policy.
Yes. Oh, I do see that right here. We're gonna highlight that a different color if I can. No, I can't. In this particular version of Adobe, I cannot, but I will make a note of that. EEAEC, his, her, change to there. Thank you for that, Mr. Manzo. All right, do I have a motion to accept this policy with that one edit that Mr. Manzo just made?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Any further comments or questions? Concerns? All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 4-0. All right, for the last couple of minutes, I'm coming back to the agenda. Okay, so we went through all of these things. We get a couple of minutes to review our revenues and expenses. These were in your packets. I'll huck the revenues on the screen for a minute. We usually only want to hear whether we should be concerned about something on either side of our ledger.
And I have no concerns. On this side of the ledger or the other, I don't think that there's anything notable that we haven't talked about. There's no areas of concern that I'm watching. And I don't know that there's any areas of celebration either, so.
Okay, but I appreciate that, and I did ask you that question, but now I'm going to ask Mr. Manzo. Mr. Manzo, do you have any concerns? Or fellow other members around the table? But Karnak says Mr. Manzo has a question.
Or if at any time, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer.
Okay, well then on that happy note, it is 7:30, 7:26. I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. It is not debatable. All those in favor? Mr. Crowley, I'll let you vote on this one. Okay, there we go. That. Any opposed? Okay, fantastic. That passes 4-0. Thank you, everybody.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome, everyone. Today is April 30th, 2025. We are present in the Beverly Middle School Library. This is the Beverly Public School Committee of the Whole, and we are all in person. I will mention that we are providing remote access this evening thanks to our friends at BevCam. They are actually broadcasting us on channel 6 and high definition channel 1073. They're also streaming this meeting on their YouTube channel, and it will be available for playback as well on their YouTube channel. The time is 7:34. I've called us to order tonight. I will do a quick attendance and then we will get into our agenda. Joining us this evening in person, I'm gonna just follow my script, if that's all right. We have Mayor Mike Cahill.
Here.
Miss Kimberly Coelho.
Here.
Dr. Kenan Mackenzie DeFranza.
Here.
Miss Karen Robinson.
Here.
Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Miss Linda Visnick.
Here.
And Miss Rachel Abel, who is myself. We are also joined by Superintendent Dr. Sue Chirocek.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent Dr. Dorothy Flaherty. I'm not seeing Dr. Morgan online, so next on my list, Ms. Emma Puglisi, our Finance Director.
Here.
Thank you. We're also joined by Aaron Brown, our Executive Director of Operations.
Here.
Thank you. And Ms. Bethany Splansky, our Director of Special Education and Pupil Personnel Services. Here. Thank you. Okay, we are joined by a whole host of principals this evening. I see Gabrielle Montevecchi and Julie Smith. And I believe Ms. Hart is on vacation. Ms. Twombly is not available. Amy Blanchard is joining us online. Okay, great, thank you. And we have Lisa Oliver and Mark Thomas. Okay, anyone else hiding? We have City Councilor Steve Crowley, who's sitting in with us, as well as our BTA representatives. We have also the co-president, Andrea Sherman, is on our online platform. Okay. Returning to our agenda this evening, our first order of business is actually the Pledge of Allegiance. And I know I called on Dr. Silva last. I'm going to go in order and ask Mayor Cahill if he would lead us this evening. We have flags there and there.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor Cahill. Next on our agenda, we have 3 sets of Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, which were provided in the packet. If we would like to do them as a group, I would entertain a motion to approve as a group. However, if anyone had concerns with any of them, we could take them individually.
Motion to approve as a group.
As a group, thank you, Ms. Visnick. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza. Were there any edits or corrections that were worth noting? I thought they were very well done. Okay, all those in favor of approving our meeting records? That's a 7-0. Thank you so much. Next, we are off to our superintendent's report for item number 3.
All right, thank you very much. I will.
And Dr. Morgan has just joined us online. Welcome, Dr. Morgan.
All righty, let me just close this up. All right, so good evening, everybody, and thank you very much. I have just one item on the superintendent's report for this evening, and that is a budget update for FY26. I'm going to walk through this evening the budget, and we've been meeting for the past 2 or 3 months with many sessions looking at many aspects of leading up to the opportunity for me to present to you a proposed budget. So this evening we're coming forward with a proposed budget for the FY26 school year. I always begin, and I always want to remind everyone that we build our budget based upon the goals that we have and the vision that we have for the district, keeping in mind always that our budget, it represents sort of the decisions that we make throughout the year, and they should align very closely with the goals that we have for our schools. also taking into consideration priorities. You'll hear me talk a little bit more about that. We've kind of garnered them together and taken a look at what, as we move through the budget, the proposals that we're making. This is the budget process. The budget process is a timeline that we have. We are currently ending the month of April with us presenting a balanced budget to you for review this evening. And so that's where we are in the budget process. I wanted to start, as we do in each one of our budget books, we always prepare and share with you. We build our budget based upon the specific enrollment guidelines and targets that are set by the school committee. Just a review for those of you who may not have seen it before, we do have class size guidelines that were set by the school committee. They were set back in 05-06. Those guidelines are set and hold for recommendations and are kind of more official numbers. The kindergarten is set at 22. Grades 1 and 2 at 25, and grades 3 through 12 at 30. However, in the past few years, as we have been working, we've all recognized that we aim for smaller class sizes, and we know they're desirable. So in practice, this particular budget has aimed at the targets, and those targets are set at kindergarten through grade 2, 22 students per class, grades 3 through 8, 25 students per class, and grades 9 through 12, 25 to 30. You'll find throughout this, I will show individually at each building what those class sizes look like. We are well below the targets in each of the areas. So when we aren't butting up against them in any way this evening. I also want to point out that our preschool and district level programs have class sizes that are determined by state special education requirements. So projected class size for general elementary classrooms, really we look at, well, we typically exclude the students that are in substantially separate programs who spend a significant part of their day in their own program. So our approach this year was to, every year, I like to call it the infamous yellow sheet that Ms. Visnick likes so much, but we often have had lots of conversation back and forth about, are we including them, are we not, do these class sizes represent them? This year, because we were looking specifically at individual buildings and at budgets within individual buildings, each one of the numbers that I'm presenting to you have, in consultation with the building principal and the team, they reflect actually the number of students who spend the significant part of their day in that classroom. So hopefully that will help clear up any confusion that any might have had on any of that as we go forward. This is just a reminder on staffing versus enrollment, and this is not a new slide, but it's always good to bring to the forefront. That Beverly has experienced over the course of the last 5 to 6 years significant increases in our staffing for many reasons. If you look at the 2019-2020 year, that is the year of the pandemic, and we were, sort of right in the middle. Our enrollment was up a little, and our staffing was pretty level. In the years that followed, we've made some significant staffing increases. Sometimes because we were entering into a hybrid model, and we had, to make some fluctuations in our staffing and the way that we did it. But you'll notice a particular increase, and it coincides with how the ESSER funding became available and resources that were available to us to do that, as well as in response to working towards recovery for our students who were greatly impacted by the pandemic. So I think it's important to note in the last 2 years, we've made a purposeful decision to take a close look at staffing and make sure that we're proposing staffing levels that meet the needs of our students, but also looking to make sure that we're carrying employees in the manner that we should. So we will continue to work towards that as we go forward, and just kind of nice to keep this graphic in mind as you see where we go. This budget includes some staffing adjustments. These categories over on the left are the categories that we've been talking about throughout this budget process. We know that we are making some staffing changes that are based on enrollment. We know that we're making reduction in some non-student facing roles and realignment of some responsibilities following attrition, program alignment to Beverly needs, and previously grant-funded positions. We have, these adjustments include the reallocation or reassignment of staff to meet student needs. A majority of the anticipated changes will be from positions that are or will be vacant. And I have that depiction on the right side. So we currently have 13.1 vacant positions in Beverly of FTEs. So some of the elimination of positions this year are coming from vacancies that already exist. We have anticipated vacancies from either retirements or resignations. We have, I think, about 13 retirements so far on record, but of those, we're able to kind of use those in a way around attrition to make sure that we're not eliminating positions. We're looking at positions, not people. And finally, there are other changes to positions in the amount of 11.42 FTEs. Those are often swaps where we have a teacher who might be teaching second grade going to fourth grade, or so those are positions that will change as we go through. I'm going to go through first with the group the program changes that we have, probably just trying to describe to each one of you as we go what those look like, and then I will take you individually through each building so you'll see specifically at each building what are the changes that we're proposing as we go forward. The first proposal that we have, you may not know, or you may know that there are two retirements in our central office this year. I'll be retiring, and the assistant superintendent is also retiring. And so we looked at that as a cabinet as an opportunity to take a look at the key roles and responsibilities that we have as a group, and those, how could we maybe look at and allocate, basically due to budget constraints and wanting to make sure that we're taking a very close look at all of our areas to see where we might find efficiencies. This particular organizational chart represents some shifting and changing in the way that we're approaching some of the work within central office. So I'm not going to read through each one, but basically what we've done, we had the assistant superintendent role, we have the director of executive director of operations, a director of pupil personnel services, director of opportunity access and equity, and the director of finance. We've taken those responsibilities and condensed them over 4 positions, and in essence combining the assistant superintendent and executive director role, and then disseminating some of those responsibilities out so the workloads are sort of distributed. As always, we have our building principals who are a significant part of our administrative leadership. So this is just for you when you see so this results in an FTE reduction of 1 position. I also wanted to talk with you about our BPS community connections. I've spoken about this in the past few weeks and highlighted that we're coming in this direction. We have a significant commitment to our program, as you know, I like to sometimes say formally known as City Connects, because we originally started our partnership with Boston College and we brought in the City Connects framework. In our first 2 years, our goal was to implement that with fidelity. Boston College had a certain formula that they had created. It was not specific to Beverly. It did not take into consideration what resources may already be available in Beverly and what we might already be working with. But we did it with fidelity for the first 2 years because we wanted to make sure that we were becoming really familiar with how it worked and what the advantages were. And in particular, we had specifically looked at how are we looking at our internal and external assets, and how are we identifying what works best for the Beverly Public Schools community? This year, in year 3, we've moved toward a more Beverly-centered approach for our students. We're continuing to focus on our school district goals, a heavy emphasis on attendance initiatives, fostering belonging, and our whole student review process. And we've worked really hard on the realignment of that chaos slide. If you can remember what that one looked like, where services were just sort of just all over the place, and we've tried to refine and review and make sure that we're able to provide access for all of our school community to the resources that are available. So to date, we have completed a whole student review of every child in the district through our last 3 years' work. So every child that we have information and data on as far as that goes. We've identified our unique strengths, both in internal, academic, and social emotional services. And again, particularly, as I said, we've been concentrating on those external partnerships with local organizations. So Bootstraps, YMCA of the North Shore, Big Brother, Big Sister. So moving into next year, we're taking steps to kind of better coordinate and realign our support services. Our goal is to reduce overlap. I'll give you an example. In Beverly, every one of our elementary schools had at least 1 full-time school adjustment counselor prior to the City Connects program coming in play. That's not necessarily how the program that was designed, usually worked. Often the City Connects person was the only school adjustment counselor in a school district. So we're looking at overlap, but we still want to make sure that we ensure that students and families can get the right help from the right people at the right time. Megan Sudak has done a phenomenal job of coordinating this program. So there is some reduction in some resourcing that you'll see as we go, and you'll see where that comes and why those decisions were made. We also wanted to put a heavy focus on our MTSS, our academic interventions, as part of our goals. To strengthen our MTSS model, we're going to continue to utilize the data monitoring that we have, identifying students for intervention. We know that these interventions can be provided utilizing building staff, including classroom teachers, coaches, interventionists, paraprofessionals, or learning center specialists. So each principal at each level in the process of this budget creation has identified their individual needs in their own building and designed a staffing pattern that meets the needs of the students in their buildings. I think a nice way to summarize this is to talk about the reallocation of resources. Currently, we have 2 full-time coaches in each one of our elementary schools, a math coach and a literacy coach, or sometimes both coaches intertwine. The focus moving into next year is to shift to this FTE of one full-time FTE of coaching, whether that's 2 half-time coaches or 1 full-time interventionist, however we split it. And each principal really looked to their own resources in their building to determine how that would best fit their individual buildings. So that's another programmatic change that we have. And finally, I wanted to identify and address the elementary library. We've had a lot of discussion about elementary libraries, and the elementary libraries have been a focus in our budget discussions throughout the process. So we've worked collectively with elementary principals, collecting information about the current supports that are in place and the use of the libraries at each building. And funding in the FY25 budget, if you remember, we had $50,000 set aside to help determine how to best support the maintenance of collections and the keeping our libraries current. We've considered a number of options. Among the options that we've considered, we considered looking at stipends. Could we provide stipends? Would that work spread over into the summer? And would we, have that work look at reviewing collections and circulation at each building? We've discussed expanding roles of our current librarians to include oversight of elementary libraries. And we've talked about maintaining the current model where our building staff, our literacy coaches are providing oversight to the library space. However, late in the budget process this year, we became aware that one of our existing librarians has submitted their intent to retire mid-year of 2025-26, and we now kind of want to put a little pause and say this might offer a chance to review a K-8 program and look what would the opportunities be for our libraries if we were to review our allocations and provide a different model for staffing at each level. And so as I sit here now, we don't have a definitive plan, but we do have set aside in the FY26 budget a proposal that includes $69,000 to be utilized in the next fiscal year, however that model shapes out. So I didn't want to leave the elementary libraries not spoken to, but we're still working on what that might look like. But the funding is set aside in the budget to address some of that. So now to the draft appropriated budget. So our FY26 requested city contribution for the draft appropriated budget that we're proposing this evening is $69,698,119. Our anticipated Chapter 70 funding, right now that process is at the House Ways and Means, and in that proposed budget, it's $15,674,495, and that makes our FY26 draft budget proposal $85,372,614. What that amounts to is an increased city contribution from last year, $6,440,000, an increased Chapter 70 of $665,550, for a total increase to the draft budget from FY25 to FY26 of $7,105,550. I would point out, and it is an historic increase, I believe, but that is a 9% ask for an increase from the FY25 budget. I would acknowledge at this point, we've had many conversations with city leaders and with the mayor and with Bryant. And when, we went forward and talked about what our needs were, we had requested it at that point in time, the 6.44. And that is it is what we believe we need to make sure that we're continuing to offer a standard level of service that we, desire in Beverly, a high-quality education. And I think we have to acknowledge that it was planning over the last 2 years that helped us as we kind of got to this point. This was not just something that we didn't surprise the city, I don't think. Historical backup. I'm going to ask Emma to just talk a little bit about this slide. I think when we look at it really quickly, the numbers are at first increasing over years, and so you wonder what the questions might be, but I know there's some nuances within it that Emma wanted to point out.
Thank you. So there are a few cost centers up there that reflect some of larger increases. So just to sort of hopefully answer any questions that you might have. Before you have the opportunity to ask them, our high school does demonstrate a larger increase than some of our other cost centers, and those increases can be attributed to expenses that were funded by budget offsets in FY25 that are being pulled into the appropriation budget for FY26. This includes Teach 6 that support co-teaching at the high school, our Salem After Dark CTE program tuition, which was previously grant funded, our athletic program, expenses exist largely at the high school. There's some additional costs there that are no longer able to be covered by the level of revenue that we bring into our athletic revolving fund. And so they're pulled into the appropriation. Another notable cost center is the one that, second from the bottom, our other instruction, our OT account. This cost center includes a wide array of services and other support for instruction, sort of in broad categories. It includes everything from curriculum development, professional development, technology, elementary enrichment, substitutes, and employee benefits. So the 10% increase to health insurance accounts for $1.1 million of the increase to this line. There's also an additional $500,000 that's held in this account for lane change adjustments. Lane change adjustments staff apply for at the beginning of the calendar year, and then they're awarded at the beginning of the school year once they've provided all of the necessary documentation. And at that time, once those lane changes have been approved, the funds get transferred to the staff's, the cost center that correlates to the staff salary account. There are also some increased technology costs related to staff equipment replacement and service renewals that impact that line.
And we'll go through that a little bit more as we go forward into the individual cost centers and look at them. But I think it is interesting because I think at first glance you can go, well, how come there's such a big increase in that cost center and not in another? And it's nice to kind of know, and we'll be identifying for you as we go through the evening what is related to which cost centers as we go. This is also just another way to take a look at how the department funding by source is coming. And this in particular, we have the slides here that just talked about those numbers. That's the appropriated budget. But not every cost center or building relies solely on the appropriated budget. They also rely often on offset of other areas. And so this actually reflects in the blue what offsets might be assigned to particular departments or cost centers. And so I think it's easy to start with the special education, which has the largest offset. That includes our circuit breaker funding. And so you see that it's not just the money that's inappropriated that goes to special education, but also some of the offset revenues that we bring in. Right. So as we go through, we kind of are going to walk you through building by building, but what we wanted to do is help you categorize some of the changes that we're making. We sort of put them in three buckets. The first bucket is really level serviced, and anything that's level serviced, those are our typical increases that you would see around enrollment or areas that are changes that we're making that we believe will support the same standard of service in the prior year, but it might include an increase or decrease depending on the changes in need, or enrollment increases and decreases, or contractual changes that we are obligated to meet. So they don't provide a higher level of service, but they meet the existing need as it is established now. We might categorize it as a strategic priority. Those are areas that we look to make some increases in services. Perhaps we're reviewing the way that supports are provided at the preschool, and so where we have an increase for a position there. And then finally, other critical needs. And really, the other critical needs are really that the budget. This is a budget that supports other changes that have been determined to be necessary and sustainable but don't impact student outcomes. So, for example, the non-student facing position at central office. So that is a budgetary constraint. We are adapting to that budgetary constraint. We made some changes to efficiency. We looked and were able to kind of review and realign responsibilities, and we believe that we can do that without negatively impacting student outcomes. So those are sort of the three broad categories that we have. And so I'm going to walk now individually through each building. I'll start in each building. You'll see a similar pattern. We'll look first at the projected enrollments. We'll look at the individual staff adjustments that we might be making in that building. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the larger, broad FTE and the overall budget for each building. So this is, starting with Ayers, this is the breakdown of the projected enrollments. Ayers is typically a building that has 4 sections of each in each grade level. They're pretty consistent in their enrollments, as you can see in the number of students that they have. They recently, this year, first year, had a small AIM program that has joined their building. It's an AIM program that's designed to be somewhat partial inclusion, somewhat separate for students. And so those numbers are included in here, but you can see the average class sizes at Ayers are well within the targets that we've set for elementary. And so those are available for you to see there. We have some adjustments to services at Ayers. I mentioned the BPS Connects coordinators and the overview that I gave you for BPS Connects. Based upon the needs of the building and overlap in some responsibilities, each building has a different level of need, and so we believe that a reduction of 0.5 staff in that building will still allow us to provide that same level of support around the BPS Connects work. Based upon enrollment projections, I've talked over the last few months about how we have two large classes in a row have left our elementaries and entered into the middle school, with middle school having a larger economy of scale and how they service their students. This allows us to add for reduction of 1 learning center teacher and 1 paraprofessional at the Ayers School. So that's the changes that we're proposing for that. And I'm going to let Emma talk us through the total school budget graph.
So the graph on the right reflects the FY26 staffing configuration for the Ayers School broken down by category. So you can see our instructional staff, our paraprofessionals, related service providers, as well as some other positions that exist within the schools. As we discussed a little bit earlier, it is not just the appropriated funding that make up the total budget for each one of our cost centers. And so at the Ayers School, the budget offsets include funds from the building revolving fund that support custodial costs, as well as funds from the 240 grant that support paraprofessional salaries.
And so then we'll move to Centerville. Same idea. We have our projected enrollments for Centerville. Centerville is a school that houses our program for students with behavioral and emotional disabilities. Again, we are depicting that as based upon what number of students would be included in classrooms or sub-separate. And those are the class sizes that we have, that you'll see in play at Centerville. They have largely 3 sections of each grade level, but they have a larger cohort in grade 3, so there's a 4th section of grade 3 for next year. And again, here are the recommendations for staffing for this building. Actually, their BPS Connects coordinator left the district, I believe, sometime in February. That position has been vacant since that time. However, Centerville already has 2 full-time school adjustment counselors on staff in that building. So the recommendation is for a reduction of 1 position, which would be the BPS Connects, but the services that BPS Connects offers will be distributed among the adjustment counselors that are there. We have a vacancy right now. I believe it's a current vacancy, and we do not anticipate the need for that position next year in our SSP program, so it's a reduction of 1 paraprofessional. And we have a reduction of an instructional coach. There is 1 instructional coach that's actually going back to the classroom, and so that left that position up, and the decision was that the interventions can be provided utilizing other resources that are available in that building. And then likewise?
So then likewise, the budget offsets that you see reflected here, again, include the building revolving fund supporting custodial costs and the 240 grants supporting paraprofessional salaries.
And these charts are all going to look similar. We have 1 for every building, so you'll see, but you'll get to know what each one looks like. At the Cove School, Cove is home to one of our two elementary schools that house our autism spectrum disorder programs. We have a great number of classes there, and so we likewise have counted for them within the projected enrollments. Again, class sizes well under the recommended targets that that we were aiming for as we went through the process. This, one thing that is unique this year at Cove, typically Cove has had 4 sections of kindergarten. Based upon the projected enrollments for kindergarten next year, there'll only be 3 sections of kindergarten. And so the reduction of the paraprofessional is because there's a reduction of a kindergarten section. There's also that kindergarten teacher will be moved to a different grade level. So it's not a reduction of a teacher because that teacher will go to a classroom that has an increased number of teachers. So it's a swap, or we've been calling them swaps, I don't know quite how. And then we also anticipate that with enrollment changes, either in the AIM program or in the general programs, we will have a reduction of 2 paraprofessionals. So those are the reductions at the Cove School.
And yet again, the budget offsets that you're seeing are coming from the Building Revolving Fund to support custodial costs and the 240 grant to support paraprofessional salaries. There's a larger portion of 240 grant allocated to the Cove School and their paraprofessionals, again, related to the size of their program. So it's sort of distributed proportionally based on the number of positions that they have.
At the Hannah Elementary School, Hannah houses our program for language-based learning disabilities. We are at current enrollment for that program, and that shifts over the year, is for 6 students to be in grade 4. When, again, aligning with the class sizes and the targets that we have for class sizes. Of note, Hannah had 3 kindergartens this year. Based upon enrollment projections, we'll be adding a 4th kindergarten at Hannah. That kindergarten will there's a plus-minus factor with North Beverly. North Beverly will be down in kindergarten as well. So you'll see that as we go. But again, looking at class sizes and targets and the number of sections that will be at in each school. And so for, here is the reflection of the added 2 FTEs at Hannah. One is for the kindergarten teacher, and the other is for an additional 4th grade classroom. Enrollments have creeped up over the course of the school year and warrant a 4th grade classroom, including as well some of those language-based students that are at the Hannah school. Similar to AIRS, based upon the needs of the building and overlap in responsibilities, we believe that we can have a 0.5 BPS Connects coordinators, that's the proper servicing for that building. And based upon enrollment projections of students and the anticipated shift of the students to the middle school, we'd be reducing 1 learning center teacher.
And at the Hannah School, their budget offsets are from the Building Revolving Fund supporting custodial costs.
And then finally, North Beverly is where our other AASD programs are located. Again, robust programs that are in place over there. And looking at the number of classes, they will be reducing, you'll see on the next slide, a kindergarten based upon enrollment, and I believe maybe a 4th grade based upon enrollment. I think that the 4th grade aged out, so. That's being reassigned somewhere, I think. So in the kindergarten, we'd be a reduction of 2 FTEs, the classroom teacher and paraprofessional from the kindergarten class that's no longer at North Beverly, as well as 1 paraprofessional based on enrollment projections. And then finally, in terms of the MTSS, reduction of 1 instructional coach, with the interventions being picked up by other resources within the building.
And their budget offsets at North Beverly include, again, Building Revolving Fund supporting custodial costs and paraprofessional salaries supported by the 240 grant. Again, this is another building with a larger AIM program, and so you see a larger amount of offsets coming from the 240 grant here.
And moving into the middle school, this is our projected enrollments for the middle school. The middle school has sub-separate programs for both Attain, which is our autism spectrum classrooms, and SSP, which is our behavioral and emotional programs, as well as they do have language-based services programs within that building as well. And these are the enrollments that are projected for the start of the school year. Of note, the grades 5 and 6 will have 2 in each grade level. There'll be 1 3-person team, which is a little unusual, but has been done before, and that is to maintain those class sizes. So In the middle school, the proposed staffing changes would be, and we're still, course registration is still underway. However, I believe that the intent on the first one is that, and I have had some conversations with some of you, but we do not propose that we will be having German next year at the middle school. We've done our German, our world language class selections for students, and our numbers in enrollments for German have been down historically over the years. We haven't had enough to have more than 2 sections, and so we will be eliminating German as an option for world language at the middle school. That does not necessarily mean we eliminate a particular person, it just means a position. And so, we have opportunities within all of our positions to make sure that we're finding a position for folks that are, in good standing and licensed and qualified for teaching. So we have a reduction of 1 L teacher based on our enrollment projections. Again, we look every year at how many students will be requiring English learner services. Our L numbers are down for the middle school next year, so there's a reduction of 1 L teacher. We have 2 BPS Connect coordinators in the middle school this year, based upon the needs and based upon the overlap in responsibilities between building adjustment counselors. We are proposing a reduction of 1 staff for that. And we are looking at enrollments and attrition, and we'll be proposing a reduction of a learning center teacher. And we have 1 current vacancy for paraprofessional, so we're eliminating that. And then finally at the middle school, but we are also, again, under other critical needs, looking at building, looking at budgets, and looking at where we can find efficiencies. We're a reduction of 1 of the assistant principals. We currently have 4, and the responsibilities will be absorbed by the 3 remaining assistant principals and the director of restorative practices. So that's minus 1 FTE. And finally, the campus monitor, which is previously funded by a grant, will not be absorbed into the appropriated budget.
So they're looking at the budget offsets. At the middle school is our Title I school, and so we do use those funds to support increasing student achievement. So that does fund a few positions, but as also supplies, material, opportunities, and resources. Also, they have offsets from the Building Revolving Fund and the 240 grant supporting paraprofessional salaries. They also have the third person on the 2 3-person teams at grades 5 and 6 are coming from our school choice funding as well.
And then to the high school. So our enrollments at the high school, we've had this conversation over the last few months as well. Our freshman enrollments are anticipated to be lower than usual at 260. And if you notice, our sophomore enrollments last year were also lower. And so we had that conversation when I broke down by section how what some of these reductions would be from. It would be taking a look at how many sections we've been running, which I think previously was like 16, and looking at probably only running 13 sections in freshman academy, and then overall looking at that. Just looking at the schedule in general and making sure that we're running classes with an average class size of 22. These are based upon either attrition or the reduction that we talked about in the number of sections that we have, reduction of 1 wellness teacher that is based upon our retirement, a reduction of math and history. Those are the sections in freshman academy. We're still running the schedule. We anticipate that there might be a reduction of 1 elective teacher just based on the lower number of students. We don't have an exact number of where that would be right now. That's based upon, we have to wait until we've run through all of the course registrations and look at how many folks we have in each section. A reduction of 1 special education teacher. That's actually a ladders teacher, I think, with just looking at in projected enrollments would be down 1 teacher. And then we have a BPS Connects coordinator in that building as well. I think it's important to note that the model that originally came out really focuses more heavily on on the early years. However, our BPS coordinator will be shifting into a guidance role, so we believe that those responsibilities can be shifted and absorbed through the adjustment counselors and the guidance role that are in the building. And then finally, campus monitor, again, same thing, funded by a grant, and so not.
So the high school also has some budget offsets. I feel like I'm a broken record, but the building revolving fund continues to support custodial costs across all of our schools, and the 240 grant providing support to paraprofessional salaries. As I mentioned earlier, the athletics program is primarily budgeted at the high school cost center, and as such, the offsets from the athletic revolving fund, which support coaching salaries, are reflected here. There's also additional offsets from school choice and SEVIS, which are two of our revolving funds that support core content teachers and guidance positions as well.
And finally into preschool. So when we look at the preschool, when we've had the opportunity to kind of think about it, preschool has had some significant changes over the last few years, whether it has been from a half-day program to a full-day program or a 5-day program to a 2 and a 3. We wanted to take a good look at our staffing pattern and how we were staffing the preschool. So some things that are really important to know about preschool. Preschool has a rolling admission. So that it's based upon when students with disabilities are identified and they're on an IEP to go to preschool, when they turn 3 on their 3rd birthday is when they begin attending the preschool. So it's a rolling admission over the course of the year. We begin the year with approximately 80 to 85 students, and then it can go from to the end of the year where there's 130 to 140 students. It impacts staffing over the course of the year, but we want to begin the year looking at the level of student need, the IEP services of the students that we have in place, and staff by classroom, and then throughout the course of the year, monitoring and evaluating the allocation of the paraprofessional resources as we go through the year. With this current recommendation, and I think it's on the next slide, I'm jumping a little ahead, but we anticipate at the start of the school year that our average preschool class size will be 8 students per classroom. So looking at that, what we are making some suggestion that our staffing, that we make changes to our staffing pattern that allow for 1 dedicated paraprofessional per classroom, along with 1 teacher per classroom, with 2 dedicated paraprofessionals for the intensive classroom, with the ability to kind of flex as that number grows, as well as 4 additional paras that we would move around the building to meet that. I think it's 5. Sorry, that should have been a 5. It's 4? Okay. So one of the things that we wanted to be able to do is monitor as students come in, what is that need, and then add staffing as needed based upon the need that comes into the building. We did have a lot of conversation with our preschool staff about increasing therapeutic supports. I think for the very young children that attend there, sometimes there has not been the supports available outside of the classroom, whether that is in the form of adjustment counselors or behavioral supports available. So this year, this budget includes the addition of therapeutical support position to directly support the preschool, which is a new addition to the preschool program.
So there was a mention before to the preschool tuition revolving fund, which supports teacher and paraprofessional salaries. That's reflected here. The budget offsets also include funding from the Early Childhood Special Education Grant, sometimes called the 262 grant, that provides special education services to the preschool program as well.
So I think it was really important to us as we presented to you this year individual building budgets that we look beyond just what the appropriated budget has, but what is the overall cost for running that building. And so I think it's been helpful, at least for us, to take a look at what are those offsets, how are they used, and where are they applied across the district. So now to get into the cost centers, the cost centers are different than buildings. They're for different aspects of the functions that go on in the district. The administrative cost center is where our central office administration is. Again, this reflects that the reduction in 1 FTE to the central office due to the restructuring that we have. And then
Yep. And so then again, so we have our FTE chart over there to the right, and a small some budget offsets that reflect clerical coordination and administration of the Title I and Title II grants. So some of that funding goes and supports those efforts as well at the administrative level.
In buildings and grounds, some of these will be the increases that we've been talking about over the past couple of months. Increases to utility costs are reflected here, as well as security licensing. We know that the renewal costs have been added to the budget for security licensing as we go forward. This one is, there's really 4 and no offset, so we'll go fast. I'll just go beyond that. It was a true donut.
So what I do want to reflect.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. It's comical, but and yet, what I want to make sure that we understand here is that these are the 4 buildings and ground positions that support the district across multiple buildings, and the remainder of our buildings and ground staff you would have already seen reflected in the individual buildings where they report to work every day. So these are just the individuals who report across the district as a whole. And so while there are no budget offsets funded from the building revolving fund here, again, showing up where those custodial salaries are showing up in the building-based budgets, we do also use the building revolving fund to support additional maintenance and capital improvements as needed. For instance, sometimes playground repairs and improvements, things like that go through there as well.
In terms of non-instructional, this is another category Emma will have a lot more to say about in the other graph, but in terms of staffing, it's just a reduction. We have a district-wide float that was previously funded on a grant, and so that one will be going down to 0.5.
And so our non-instructional budget includes our district-wide health services, some of our equity work in our transportation department, and the budget offsets that are reflected here come from our transportation revolving fund, and they support the cost of bus driver salaries as well as some vehicle costs.
And I love this one, other instruction. I always wondered if we could have a better name for that, but that seems to be the technical name for it. The other instruction is really where a lot of our it is where our health insurance and our benefits are. The $1.4 million increase reflects the 10% increase to health insurance costs, as well as the contractual benefit increases to 403B and some of those other areas. The reserve for lane changes is, as you know, our teachers can apply for lane changes. We received 135 lane change applications for the FY26 year. Because historically not all 135 finish, we are budgeting this at 125 with an estimated cost of about $4,000 per employee. So that comes up with the 500,000. Our Director of Instructional Technology is a reduction. That's actually Judy Miller's position, who has served this district so beautifully over the past few years. Judy retired a couple of months ago. However, she will remain on available to us through contractual services, so we'll still see her around doing her work around professional development, but she's going to be, it's not as an FTE. And then finally, our wireless connectivity was up for renewal. The proper way to do that was for the best pricing was a 3-year cycle, so this budget includes the renewal costs for our wireless service. And then finally, we've had some discussion about this as well. We have put on hold for the last couple of years our staff laptop replacement program. And so our high school staff have laptops that are nearing 6 years of age. And so that we're making sure that we get back on our plan for sustaining technology for our staff. And that cost is $167,970.
So we talked a little bit earlier about what falls under that other instruction umbrella, and it really is an umbrella. And as mentioned, we do have employee benefits, and so a good portion of the budget offsets that are reflected are the benefit offsets that correspond to the staff whose salaries are supported by grants and revolving funds. There's also funds allocated from grants that support professional development. And additionally, at the high school, we have a one-to-one laptop program. This is where we budget those costs and their corresponding offsets, just to sort of reflect in a whole picture of all the money spent by the Beverly Public Schools.
And then finally, in special education, we have, there are 3.6 FTEs that were unfilled this year, either because we could not find folks qualified to do that job, or that someone left during the year. We know that it comes to a reduction of 1 team chair, 1 certified occupational therapy assistant, 1 behavior analyst assistant, and 1 psychologist. So we will not be filling those in FY26. However, again, another strategic priority, we have one of the strongest AIM and ATTAIN programs for public school in the Commonwealth. We know that we have amazing teachers that are doing amazing work. One of the things that we've heard over and over is, could we provide some professional development supports for them? So much in the same way that we provide math coaches and literacy coaches, this will be a position that will be empowering our educators in the area of AIM and ATTAIN with some special kind of coaching for the work that they do in their self-contained programs. And that's an additional FTE that we've added and included in this budget.
And as we alluded to earlier on that bar graph, the primary source of budget offsets for the special education department is our circuit breaker, which provides offset to out-of-district tuitions. There's also offsets from the 240 grant and the special education tuition revolving fund, which support district-wide staffing, supplies, and contracted services that support special education.
That brings us to the first slide that we saw when we started the proposed budget. Our draft budget proposal this year is for a budget of $85,372,614. That includes a city contribution of $69,698,119 and Chapter 70 funding of $15,674,495. And again, not to be redundant, but these are the numbers that we are proposing for the school budget. This is I felt like this was an interesting way to take a look at it. This is just the budget by function when we take a look at where is the money going to. That big yellow area is 83% of the budget, or $71,225,669. Goes to wages, benefits, and other compensation. And the other largest area of the pie is out-of-district tuitions, which are 7% of our budget at $5,934,579. And the remaining 10% is spread over all of the other cost centers and all of the other costs that we incur as a school district. So where we are in the legislative process right now, we know the first round of the governor's proposed budget was at $75 per student. The House Ways and Means have come forward with an incremental increase of $150 per student, again, as minimum aid district. That is how the formula works, and that's what we're getting. So we have built this budget with the $15,674,495. It's really important to point out that the Senate now takes a crack at that budget, and so it's not assured that we're going to get that funding. However, we will adjust our proposed budget based upon what comes forward in that way, and we have sort of contingency plans for all of that. We won't know the final Chapter 70 number until June. It's usually June before we find that final number. Our next steps, we'll be publishing the budget book. We'll have it to all of you relatively soon. It has to be, there's a sort of a requirement as to when it has to be out. I think that's May 7th.
So the budget book by law has to be published no less than 2 days before the public hearing, but we anticipate it having published before that.
Right, so I think we're aiming for a May 7th. That's
Yes.
a Friday.
Yeah.
And then our budget hearing is scheduled for May 14th. And then I didn't know the exact date when you had your school committee vote scheduled for, but it will happen after the hearing. So
If memory serves me, do we need to vote tonight on the proposed budget for you to publish that budget book?
we're
Do
going
you
to
need a
rely on
motion?
your memory. I will have to,
I'm
I don't have
trying
an
to
answer to
remember.
you for that right off the top of my head.
I will second that. I will second that motion. And then I guess as chair, we should open it up. Are there any questions or comments about what we've just seen before we vote on this motion?
So my question is, if we look at the difference in between the governor's budget and the House Ways and Means, it's by the back of my notebook / napkin, $332,775. So I guess I'm feeling uncomfortable about that much money being in flux. And so we're gonna print this budget, and then we're going to have our public hearing, and we're going to have to vote on it, probably all before the Senate and before the conference committee, thank you, its
And then
name.
back to the governor.
And then back to the governor. So from my point of view, I kind of think the bottom number is the governor's number, right? Meaning that's the low water mark. I can't imagine the Senate saying we want to give less money to education than what the governor proposed. And so what that leaves us with then is a risk on the table of 330, a third of $1,000,000. Let's just round up. I'm in stats class, I can do that now. So I guess I'm looking for some kind of reassurance that we already saw a lot of FTE removals. Where are we going to come up with a third of $1,000,000, $333,000 if we roll back, if the state rolls back to the governor's budget versus the current House proposal?
Well, so we've had lots of discussions among the leadership team, and we have areas and ideas about places that we would, that we would look to. I will say that I don't anticipate a rollback to the governor number. In general, the sentiment I don't think is to go back that far, but I also think that we enter into every budget season in the same position. I don't think we ever know that final Chapter 70 number, and so we always have had a contingency plan. In terms of identifying, immediately, I think we would have to go back to take a look and see exactly what we would be doing.
Right, and I guess I don't believe that I've ever pounded on this number before, but I feel like we need to really pay attention to this number because there are some federal grants that may well be at risk as well, right? So I believe we get half a million in Title I, right? We get, give
those
me a
numbers
number,
aren't out
like
yet.
1.5 in IDEA. Collectively, those two federal grants and this number are huge. It's a huge amount of risk. And so I don't know that I expect an answer so much as I want to put that on the table. I want to make sure that everybody sitting around this table understands that we're going to quite likely vote on a budget that has $2.3 million at least somewhat at risk, with the 0.3 being the state level funding. And who that, you're right, we have no control over the federal level but I just want us to already be talking about that because I feel it's really important, because I feel it's really a real and present danger.
Thank you, Ms. Bisnick. Mayor Cahill, you had your hand.
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. Gosh, there have been years where the House, Senate, and Governor get together and do what's called a local aid resolution, and then we know in April what the number is going to be. This is not one of those years, right? I will say that the governor proposed a 2.2% increase in unrestricted government general aid, also known as UGA. It is this one very small line that goes to cities and towns to the municipal side of government, and the House cut that. So it's about $170,000 increase. That was all that the city of Beverly is getting in new money from the state, and the House saw fit to eliminate it, to level fund it from this year to next year. So who knows what's going to happen in the Senate in conference and with the governor. Typically, when you see a number like the House just put out, it becomes the new floor, right, for Chapter 70, but we can't know till the budget's done for sure, right?
I think I can say with certainty, though, that any changes that we made, we certainly would bring to all of you. Like, we wouldn't just randomly make changes. So I think we have to wait and see what those numbers are when they come forward, and then we would be coming forward with whatever our suggestions, our recommendations were for you all to decide as we go forward. And I do hope that that the federal funding remains intact, because you're right, that's a totally different story and a totally different dilemma that we'll be facing if that happens.
Calling myself. I think, we have to be comfortable working with a degree of uncertainty this year, perhaps brings us more uncertainty than ever, but we're constantly facing move-ins, move-outs, people's economic status changes, people's needs change. You know, we have to be able to put forward our best guess, and I think that Dr. Juracek and her team have put in extra effort this year, you know, in the pre-planning for the last 2 years, understanding how we used our ESSER money, how we've used our revolving funds to provide what our students need and how to level service our budget. So I'm pretty confident in this number that we now have a motion for at least the budget book to be put forward just to cover ourselves in case we were supposed to do that. So I think there's a lot of detail that has been presented here tonight. I look forward to having more time with the budget book, so I appreciate the fact that you'll get that out to the public and to us as school committee members for us to look through. But I think that, you know, a really high degree of effort has been put into evaluating everything to protect Beverly's breadth and depth of services that we provide to all of our students. I think that's something that we collectively have tried to maintain and protect because we value education in our community. So with that, I don't know if there were other people that wanted to comment. Yes, okay, Ms. Robinson, go ahead next.
I just have a couple of questions. I know you went through that. That was very detailed and helpful. But so in total, it's how many people from like after retirements and attrition, et cetera, how many people will like be out of jobs?
So it's a very
really
small.
in each like unit A, admin, unit A, B, and C.
So one of the things that I think that was the greatest amount of work, and I give a great deal of credit to all of the folks, the principals and everybody for working. We worked really, really hard to have this have the least amount of impact on staff that are working in our buildings right now. I think that overall, and our estimate right now is like 3 staff that we would still be continuing to look to see if there were areas of licenses or qualification that we would be able to move them into other roles. But right now, it's at about 3 or 4 that are displaced, but still looking. And again, it's early in the year. We don't know if we'll have folks that go to other positions in other places. And so, we worked really hard to, on the backs of attrition for the retirements. We had 13 retirements, which gave us an opportunity to kind of really move folks around. And we had the vacancies. A lot of these are vacancies. So, a lot of the eliminations are vacancies. So it looks like this long list, but in essence, it's going to have a direct impact on folks that we're still looking to try to, find a spot for, is about 3 or 4 staff.
So that was like 3 or 4 teachers or 3 or 4?
Well, there was I would say there's 1 administrator and 2 or 3 teachers. We don't anticipate any issues with paraprofessionals. We typically have the attrition with paraprofessionals over the course of the year, so it doesn't feel like it would be that. There may be job change, building changes or, assignment changes within buildings, but that's really what we've done. I think a really great job of looking at how can we move folks around and how can we keep them, keep the job situation for the people that we have working for us. And, that was our goal. And I think that this accomplishes that really well.
Thank you. And with with everything that you presented, are there any particular programs, schools, subgroups that you're particularly concerned about as a result of these cuts?
I think because of the manner in which we approach the budget and that the decisions were made in conjunction with building principals, I think we had a really good handle on programming and on the needs of each individual building. I think that in particular, taking a look at our MTSS, I think that was an area that we were all wanting to address and make sure that we had enough going on in terms of interventions. It's been sort of a transition from pandemic to recovery to now just sort of now really building and working on strong skills for students and making sure that we're doing that disaggregating of data and looking at subgroups and being able to address need in that way and not riding on the backs of special education and IEPs we don't want that to be the only game in town. We like to be able to provide proactive interventions to students as we identify need. And so I think if there's an area that I would love to see us continue to focus our energies on, it is really in that area. And I think in speaking with, and I'll look to them, but I think in speaking with sort of our principals, that's an area that they continue. They're very invested in holding data meetings and making sure they're looking at students and then being able to provide those interventions. So again, the decisions were made, I think, around the coaching in the elementary levels to shift to sort of an intervention model where we're getting some more face-to-face interventions going with them. I don't have, I feel like overall, we've looked at it. I think the high school, the enrollment changes, sort of attributed a lot to our looking at some of those staffing changes for teachers. But again, I feel confident that what we've put forward is not lowering service delivery for our students. It still maintains that quality of service delivery for our students in our buildings. Yeah.
So we have a motion on the table to have the budget book published as recommended by Dr. Trocek and as presented tonight by our finance director and superintendent. Were there any other questions or comments? Are we ready for,
Sorry, can we, this isn't set, the numbers aren't set yet, though.
no, this is just to publish it and to cover us, because I vaguely remember us voting that, yes, we want the
This allows Emma
recommended.
to give you a more detailed book ready. We just can't, yeah.
Yep,
And it means this is the proposed number that'll go to public hearing.
Correct.
this is what goes,
Yep.
yes, the budget book will come out
And go to
and
public hearing.
be
Yep.
the numbers from which we speak. Okay. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor? Okay, 7-0. Okay, publish
Thank you.
away. Yep. Let me know if you need any proofreading services. Okay. Okay, next on our agenda is the report from the chair. In terms of our superintendent search update, the negotiating subcommittee is actively negotiating with Dr. Cushing. We met on Monday, April 28th, and have presented a draft contract, which has been returned and will be the subject of our executive session at the end of tonight's meeting. Just to let the public know, we will have an executive session at the end of the meeting, and we will not be returning to open session tonight. And then the only other thing we put on tonight's agenda were some policies. We have first readings on a few and a second reading on our finance and facility. So if you would just indulge me for a moment. For our first reading at Committee of the Whole, we're looking in our B section of our policies. These are pretty standard. Donna did highlight for us the only differences between the MASC format and our own format is just the school committee instead of committee. And we are just aiming to be standardizing on using a descriptor throughout our entire set of policies on that. So we'll take that up again to vote at our next available agenda slot. Ms. Visnick, for the Finance and Facilities second reading, we're looking at EC, ECA, EDC, and EE. I don't know if you want to remind the committee about the yellow highlights that we had in these documents. We were looking to make consistent reference between children or students. Those are,
That's all that's in EC.
and the gender neutral they in EC. In ECA, there is a larger section that looks like it's a Beverly specific insertion into the MASC version. Is that?
That accurately reflects what we actually do procedurally speaking. So we're not changing anything. We're just writing down what we actually do.
Which is the visitor badge process and signage, okay? And then on EDC,
Yeah, this one we kind of went around the we went around the mulberry bush a little bit about this actually a while ago. So I guess I'm looking across the table. Dr. Trocek, I would love it if you would find this one. And I think that we, as a general rule of thumb, the public school buildings and the equipment in them are, but really belong to the public, right? They're paid by taxpayer dollars. And as such, we want the public to be welcome into our buildings. That said, we do have a rental policy, and we certain groups have to pay to come in, and there's always a certain amount of risk of damage to the equipment, and I think we kind of try to take that into account when we set up the policy and the rental schedules. And so this, I feel like these changes kind of, again, talk about what do we actually do and acknowledge the fact that sometimes when the buildings are used, things break. And so we want people to be responsible, and we want people to act responsibly. And so this last little yellow part, right? There will be measures we didn't actually name. We didn't put words to what I like to call the teeth of if something goes wrong, what do we do? How do we react? But we do need to say, if something gets broken, if something gets damaged, then we'll address it. So that's what we're saying in these changes. And I'm looking across the table to make sure I didn't misrepresent that.
Yep. And then policy EE, there was no difference. It's Beverly's own policy about student transportation services.
Correct.
And it relates to our district and our configuration. So we're looking for a motion as presented to move these as the currently approved version as of today's date. And
We didn't hear you because you didn't unmute.
So moved, please.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Robinson. And so as presented, as of tonight, update policies. Are there any further comments or questions? And we're doing this as a group for those in this packet, all four?
Just know that next meeting we'll have some more because we pushed some more through F&F earlier this
For
evening.
first reading, thanks. Okay, all in favor? 7-0. We'll make sure Ms. Bergeron gets that update. And then lastly, there's some CISL policies that are coming to us out of CISL for our first reading. And again, they've been highlighted for us. I don't know if Dr. McKenzie, if there was anything in particular you wanted to report out. Pretty obvious.
Yeah, I thought they were fairly standard.
Yep.
I don't know if there are any questions or comments.
So we'll plan a vote for our next meeting on those. Okay. Great. That's all we put on tonight's agenda because we did recognize the budget would take a significant portion of this evening, and we do have some business to attend to in executive session. So for that reason, I, the chair, will make a motion that we vote to meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A for purpose number 3. Purpose 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with the Beverly Teachers, I had this on here in case we needed it, for the Beverly Teachers Association Unit A, B, and C, and individual contracts, which is our real reason, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee, and we will not return to open session.
Second.
Thank you. And we do need to do this by a roll call vote. Mayor Cahill,
Yes.
Kimberly Coelho,
Yes.
Ken-Ann McKenzie DeFranza,
Yes.
Karen Robinson.
Yes.
Jeffrey Silva.
Yes.
Lorinda Visnick.
Yes.
And Rachel Abel. At 7-0, that motion has passed at 8:48 p.m. We thank everyone that has joined us this evening and has been watching from home. Thank you also to BevCam for broadcasting us and making this available after the fact for those interested in our community. We wish you all a good night.